Blog Talk Radio.
The following broadcast is brought to you by the iGolf Sports Network.
Golf Talk Live is sponsored by the iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. Here's Andrew to tell you more about our sponsors.
iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. And Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, including reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top teaching professionals, all designed to help you improve from tee to green. Welcome to Golf Talk Live with your host, Ted Odorico. Join Ted each week as he speaks with some of the best in golf. This week's special guest will join us a bit later. But first up is another great discussion on Coach's Corner. So let's introduce tonight's Coach's Corner panel.
All right, good evening, everybody, and once again, welcome to Golf Talk Live. I am your host, Ted Odorico, and we've got a great show for you this evening. We're just hopefully waiting for the other party on our Coach's Corner panel to join us. One of them is here already. We're just waiting for the other one. So I'll introduce them in just a second. And then a little bit later on in the broadcast, I'm going to be joined by my very special guest, once again, Dr. Bernacki. He is the president of the Golf Heritage Society. So I'm looking forward to having him come back. He's gearing up for a special event a little bit later on in the season, early fall actually. So he's going to come on and talk a little bit about that and maybe give us some other updates at the Golf Heritage Society as well. Really excited to have tonight's guests on, and I'm going to introduce both of the panelists, and hopefully the other will. I've just sent a message out, so hopefully the other will join us momentarily. But tonight on the panel, if everything goes well, we're going to have Sue Weger. She is a #1 best-selling international author, motivational speaker, and peak performance coach. She's a 24-year LPGA Class 8 golf professional and owner of Weger Consulting, LLC. Also joining the panel tonight is Brandon Stooksbury. He is the head golf professional at the historic Metairie Country Club outside New Orleans. He's also an Amazon #1 best-selling author of 2 books, The Wedge Book, which came out back in 2015, and more recently, earlier this year, The Putter Book, which came out in 2021. For the past 10 years, he's been ranked among the top 10 teachers in his state by Golf Digest and was part of the magazine's Elite Best Young Teachers list. He's a 3-time PGA Teacher of the Year and a regular contributor to golf media around the world. Plus, he's a Golf Tips Magazine Top 25 instructor. So I'm going to welcome for now. I see actually Sue is here as well, so I'll welcome both of them. Good evening, Sue and Brandon. Welcome to Coach's Corner here in Golf Talk Live.
Thanks, Ted. Looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, no problem. Brandon, I'm going to just get you to mute for just a second, just because I know you're traveling and there's a little bit of background noise. I'm going to start with Sue on the show first off anyway. So if I can get you to mute your mic temporarily, just to farm out some of the background noise. So Sue, welcome to Coach's Corner. I'm glad you were able to make it. And I'm excited to have you on the panel discussion tonight. You're joined, of course, by Brandon Stooksbury, who is a fellow golf professional out in the New Orleans area, actually. He just moved to that area and took up a head golf professional position there at the Metairie Country Club in New Orleans. So he's joining you tonight on the panel. But we're going to talk about, guys, the key points to improving your score. There's a number of them, some of them that factor in. And I want to get each of your thoughts on some of these points and just what you feel sort of best represents each of the areas. So, Sue, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind. And one of the points I always put together is I believe in practicing the important stuff. I'd like to get your thoughts. What you think? We see a lot of guys and gals out in the practice tee, and they're kind of all over the place. In your mind and based on your experience, what do you think is some of the important stuff that the folks need to be practicing if they want to get better and score better?
Well, I think the first thing that they have to practice is knowing what to practice based on what they do on the golf course. And I think a lot of the times people don't know what they're actually doing on the golf course in the sense of, where do they need the most help? And I think the first thing that most people do is they need to analyze, what I like to call it a playing journal, which means, are they driving, off the tee? Are they doing okay off the tee? Or are they having trouble in the fairway? Or are they having trouble with their wedges? Or they're having trouble with their putting? And I think that's the first thing is, let's analyze the data first, and then break it down a little bit to help them so they can, what we call purposeful practice, instead of just guessing to find out what should I be doing. So I think that's the most important thing, is to really analyze what's really happening. And that's why I really love playing lessons, because as a professional, we can see really what's going on the golf course, where I know a lot of the times people go to the driving range and then they come to me and say, well, I need to work on this. And then I take them out on the golf course and it's something totally different. And I think that's where we can help them the most, is really help them understand where should you be practicing, in the sense. And this is how you can improve your game differently, instead of just going out there and hitting golf balls on the range.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sue. You're right on the money. Brandon, I'm going to bring you back in, so you go ahead and unmute your mic. Sue raises brings up a really great point. Obviously, doing an analysis of your student is extremely important to understand where they're at. But more importantly, again, as she pointed out, we often see many of our students out in the practice tee, and they think they need practice in one area, but maybe actually it's something else. And we get them out in the golf course, and sort of all hell breaks loose. What do you think? Is there some specific things or areas, Brandon, that you have discovered over your career that the folks really need to focus on?
Well, yeah, I think Sue brings up a great point. They have to know what they need to spend their time on, right? And unfortunately, you can't just leave it to what they think, because as golfers, we tend to be influenced by lots of things. You really need data to help you make that decision. And so, let's assume for a second that they're doing what Sue's talking about, and that they're collecting data on how they play, and that's allowing them to know that they need to spend more time, let's say hypothetically, on putting or on short game. Mm-hmm. The next thing I would tell you that I think very, very few people get right is they don't practice with any sort of purpose, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll give you this great example. A lot of times I think people use golf as a stress reliever, and that's okay. It's one of its functions can be that. But when you've had a stressful day at work and you stop by the driving range or your local club or your local course on your way home, and you just want to de-stress and hit balls for an hour, that's not practice. That's stress relief, right? That's burning calories. That's the same thing as jogging for an hour, because that's really all your golf game is getting out of it, right? You're burning calories. You're not really getting better at golf. Proper practice not only knows what you're practicing on or what you're supposed to be practicing doing, but it's also got a purpose. It's driven around competition. And whether that's a game or whether that's tracking how many times you hit a green or how close each tip shot gets, or randomizing your practice to make sure that you're not hitting the same shot over and over and over again, there's a plan, there's a purpose. It's not just randomly hitting a golf ball. And very, very few people get that right. And unfortunately, they might put some time in, but it doesn't really lead to their skill improving very much because it's not really practice.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point as well, and you're so right. I can remember over the years just myself, sometimes, you're having an all right day and you just feel like getting up to the driving range and hitting some balls, but I knew in my mind that wasn't a practice session. That was just out having some fun. I like to hit golf balls once in a while just for the sake of hitting them. And, I knew that, I wasn't necessarily focusing on any one area of my game. I just enjoyed getting out there. So as you said, like a stress reliever or just something, just to, I hate to use the term killing time, but, is a lot different. And I think sometimes you see a lot of folks out there that just go up and hit balls, and they kind of, think that, okay, well, I just hit 50, 60 golf balls, so I'm good. I've practiced this week. And then they go out and play next week, but they haven't really focused on some of the fundamentals or some of the areas that were really key to, where they needed to put their attention in. And so they're not really scoring any better. So I think you both raised some very valid points. And that is, first off, listen now, do a quick analysis on what the areas are that the folks are really struggling with, not just taking their word for it. It's not that we don't trust our students, but a lot of times they don't really understand what can truly benefit them, and they're not focusing on some of the things. And then also, too, again, making sure that they're putting in quality practice. In other words, practicing with a purpose, not just going up there and hitting balls. Sue, I'm going to come back to you, and this is one here. We see a lot of, especially our high handicap golfers, sometimes posting some pretty big numbers. And I think there's a couple of different factors in doing that. What can we do, or how can we help our students play away from that big number? One thing I can think of off the top of my head is for our weaker players or less accomplished players need to not be as aggressive out in the golf course. That's one area that I can think of. What are some other areas that you think of that maybe can help them focus on playing away from those and getting those big numbers? What can they do different in their approach?
Yeah, and their approach, again, it goes back to practice and understanding that, 65% of your score is short game. So you're putting, your chipping, and your pitching inside of 60 yards is where most of these, let's say, less skilled players have trouble with, because that's not where they're practicing. They're usually, trying to get their full swing accomplished. But if they go back and they understand that, wow, 65% of my score is really putting, chipping, and pitching inside of, let's say 60 to 80 yards, then again, we go back and help them set up, like the gentleman said, with the purposeful practice, in the sense, okay, let's teach them what golf really is, because a lot of people think, well, it's just hitting a golf ball and that's where you're going to be gaining your score, and that's not true. We said 65% of your score is based on inside of 60 to 80 yards, and once you educate them, they'll start practicing a little bit differently, hopefully, because not everybody likes to practice chipping and pitching and putting, because some of them they think it's boring, and that's why I kind of created a 10 putting group, a 10 putting video to let my clients, okay, here's your 10 drills I want you to go do, and that way they have, again, purposeful practice. For each drill, there's a purpose behind it, instead of just getting out there and say, okay, I'm just going to go hit some 3-footers. Well, as we know, we don't get 3-footers all the time. We get 10-footers, we get 7-footers, we get 5-footers, and the same thing with chipping and pitching. So I just think you have to educate those what I call less skilled players, and understanding that short game is 65% of your score, and let's start there. And then as you get better, then you'll actually, because if your pitching gets better, your full swing is going to get better too, because you're striking the ball differently.
Right, exactly. Great points, Sue. Brandon, everybody wants to play away from those big numbers. Sue obviously pointed out some great things. I know you will, I'm sure will agree with everything there, because I know you focus on the short game as well. But what are some other areas, or what are some other things that I think the folks are doing maybe incorrectly, and it's causing them? Obviously there's a certain skill aspect, and maybe not practicing diligently in some of the areas they need to. But what are some other things that you can think of that might help some of the golfers out there stay away from posting those big numbers?
Well, let's start by making a plan, right? I mean, there's a novel concept, right? And so, again, I'm going to go back. There's two kinds of golf, right? There's stress relief, have fun on the weekend golf, and then there's golf that you're trying to play as well as you can play, right? Those are two very different kinds of golf. And so if you're trying to play and you're trying to get better and you're trying to score and shoot a lower score, then you got to have a plan, right? You got to have a way to look at a hole and take what you do and try to figure out where you need to aim it or how you need to hit it or the club, how far you need to hit it, et cetera, that maximizes your chance of being able to hit the next shot. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that, right? For a club-level golfer,
right.
What can I do to maximize my chance of being able to have a clean swing at the next shot? Because I'm not really concerned about fairway versus rough. I'm concerned about rough versus the bushes, right? Or
right.
I'm concerned about, just short of the green or around the edge of the green versus the 6-foot deep greenside bunker, right? And so come up with some sort of plan, and that alone should help you to avoid some big numbers. I'm going to add one more thing to it. When you make that plan, just execute the plan. Don't play golf swing. Don't try to guide the ball. Look, if you play a 35-yard slice, make a plan for a 35-yard slice, and then just go hit a 35-yard slice. Right? There's nothing you can do in the moment that's going to change it. I used an analogy earlier today with one of my players. I said, look, this is like, I'm in the South, and so NASCAR is a big thing down here. Right? And so I said to him, look, you can work on your car all you want Monday through Saturday. You can tweak the engine, you can clean it, you can polish it, you can do whatever you want. But when the engine starts Sunday morning, you got what you got. Now you just got to drive it. Right? And so make a plan. And then just go out and swing the golf club. Are you going to hit them all right? No, 100% no. You're not going to hit them all the way you want, right? But if you've done everything you can do to plan smartly, and if you just relax and let your swing do what your swing does, then you have every way in the world to minimize the damage of when you hit a bad swing. It's a difference in hitting the driver off a tee that goes into the water versus one that goes into the right rough. The same golf swing can hit it in either one of those situations. One, you can't hit it again. The other one, you just walk up to it and you hit the next one. And that's the difference in a triple bogey and a bogey. And it makes a big difference.
Yeah, again, some great points, both of you. This is the thing, is not having a plan coming into your round. A lot of people, especially, and there's no excuse for that, especially players that maybe belong to a course or play a particular course on a regular basis, you've got a great advantage because you've been on that course. You know where a lot of the trouble is. You know where to stay out of. So go in with a game plan and don't just show up and say, well, I'm going to hit. And the other thing, too, just to go to your point there, Brandon, was that, whatever, when you warm up before you go out on the first tee, when you're out on the range or the practice tee and you're just warming up, getting used to the shots and so forth, if you've got a big old slice that day, don't try to change things when you get out on the golf course. Save that for your next practice session with your golf coach or your teaching professional that you're working with, or even your own personal session later on. I see so many golfers, and I know both of you do, that get out there and they say, well, maybe it's my grip, and they start fiddling around with their grip, and then, well, no, maybe I'm taking it too far inside, so they try to, or the opposite. And by the time they get to about 9 holes, they've messed up their swing so much that it doesn't resemble anything like it did at the beginning of the day, and it just adds to their frustration. So I agree with both of you what you said. I think if you want to play away from some big numbers, I think you need to focus on certain areas of the game that can help you reduce the score, but you got to go in there with a game plan and play with what you take that day. Sue, something else too I think that helps, and I want to preface this because I don't want people to misunderstand, but when I was growing up as a youngster, I always made a point, if I wasn't playing with friends or what have you, and if I was just showing up at the course one day and I was going to jump in with a twosome or a threesome, I always said to the pro, I said, for the most part, people coming to the golf course, put me with some better players. I always wanted to play with better players as opposed to people that were not as good as me. And I was pretty good as a youngster. So what do you think about that? And what are some of the advantages of that? Obviously, I'm not suggesting that you mimic what they do as far as their golf swing. You have to have your own golf swing. But there are some things that you can learn from better players by sticking with them out in the golf course. Maybe you can run off a few of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime that you go play golf, it's a learning opportunity, and that's what I tell all of my players. I said, you're going to learn something today, whether or not it's going to be learning something about the golf course. You might learn something about yourself, and you might learn from somebody else, and that's good. I mean, what a great opportunity to have that availability to just be open to it, and I think that's what stops a lot of people, because when they're playing with better players, they're worried about who they are and how their swing looks or whatever. And I just keep teaching my players, like, just be open-minded, and it's going to be a learning opportunity any chance you get. Like I said, the golf course may teach you something. The other player might teach you something. You have to be open to it. And I think that's what makes golf, this great game, so fabulous, because it's an opportunity to learn something. Every time you go play, every time you go swing, you're going to learn something. And if you're not open to learning, then we know what that happens. Then somebody else shows up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. My good friend Cindy Miller always says that. She says one day Cindy shows up and the other day Cynthia shows up, and she never knows which one's going to get there until she gets out in the golf course. And obviously one's good and one's bad. But the thing that I always, and I'm using myself as an example here, the thing that I always took away with it, I didn't try to learn how they were swinging, or I didn't try to emulate specifically how they approached, the golf ball. But what I did learn from is I watched how they prepared, especially if they were a really good player. I watched, how do they prepare? Do they have a good pre-shot routine? Do they have a consistent pre-shot routine that they're doing the same things all the time? And there were a lot of different things. And I would also the strategy. A lot of times if they had commonalities, if they were slicing the ball a lot, and if they were playing to that slice, then again it sort of falls into the strategy which Brandon talked about a second ago. So there are a lot of things that you can learn from playing with better players. And conversely, if you're playing with some that are not as good as you, that can have a negative effect, because you start picking up their bad habits, and you're sort of doing an exchange. The one thing I will say for those out there that tuning into the show that want to get in with a group that's a better players, there's two things that you have to be mindful of. Number one, if you're not as good of a player, be respectful if they're playing at a pretty good pace. If you're not that good of a player, and if you have to, and obviously if you're in a tournament, it's a different story, but you're not going to be playing with them if you are. But pick up your ball. If you start getting up 7, 8, 9 shots, pick up your ball and keep the pace of play. And don't sit there and pester them all the time trying to get swing tips and ideas and that. Just observe. Be a sponge. Observe what they're doing and learn what you can. And maybe afterwards at the 19th hole you can have a conversation with them and say, hey, I noticed you guys did this out there, and maybe you could help me out a little bit with my game, or what did you notice? There's things that you can learn, as you said, from that. So great point, Sue. Thank you. Brandon, I'm going to give you a different question, because I think Sue pretty much covered everything there. One of the things that I think that a lot of amateurs really struggle with is their level of commitment out on the golf course. We see from the professionals on TV, they'll, identify what the situation is going to be. They make a decision, they commit to it, and then they just do it. A lot of our amateurs don't seem to follow that same pattern. What are some tips that you can think of that might be able to help some of our amateurs follow that same pattern, to be able to make a commitment, stick with it, everything from club selection to, the type of shot they want to hit, and then just get out there and do it? We often see them, sort of floundering around out there. What do you think? How can we help them to be more committal, if you will, in their golf shots?
Well, commitment is all about consistency, right? It's easy to commit to something when you know pretty much where it's going to go. Now, here's something that's interesting. I have people ask me all the time. I'm sure Sue would agree. If I had a nickel for every time a student came to me and said they wanted to be more consistent, I'd be living on a boat, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing: someone that slices the ball 35 yards, they're the most consistent player on the entire golf course. They do the exact same thing every time they swing it. Right? I mean, if you told me in my personal game, Brandon, every time you hit it, it's going to go 30 yards to the right, I'd shoot 65. Right? I mean, what they have to start to understand is that they have some of the skills necessary to play better golf right now if they just add a plan into it. But to your point earlier, what they do is they try to fix the slice after the first one. And then the change that they make takes away the consistency that the slice had. And now they have to deal with that miss in addition to the slice that's probably going to show up again. And then they're not going to like the hook they just hit because they were expecting a slice. And so now they have to try to change something else to fix the hook, and then it slices again, but they were expecting the hook, and it's just this big vicious cycle that goes round and round and round, right? And so stop messing with it, right? That would be my advice.
Right.
Stop messing with it. Just go play golf, right? If you hit it 30 yards to the right, aim it left. Like, we're not building missiles here, okay? I mean, it's just not that hard. I understand that the ball isn't going straight, but you don't have to hit it perfectly straight to not make an 8. You just have to understand where your ball is likely going to go, and then you can hedge your bet away from that place, right, or away from the danger that comes from that. And so I just don't – it's so frustrating because when you talk about watching a better player play, right, and what can they learn from it. Well, that's something they can learn, right? Better players manage their game. And I know every single 20 handicapper out there that's listening right now is saying to themselves, oh, sure, it's easy to manage your game when you hit it straight every time. Listen, I play to a 4 handicap. I don't hit it straight every time. I assure you I don't hit it straight every time, right? But I know enough about what my tendencies are to be able to aim myself and plan myself accordingly to minimize the damage. And they just don't do that. Instead, they choose to mess with it, and they destroy any shred of consistency that they ever had before. And in the absence of consistency, they replace it with sheer panic, right?
Yeah.
Because they have no clue where it's going to go. It might go left. It might go right. You might move so much that you're going to top one, or you're going to hit one fat, or you're going to hit one thin, and it just turns into a total disaster. And so I see it every day. I'm sure Sue would agree. It happens all the time, and it's just unnecessary. It just doesn't have to be that stressful.
Yeah,
I totally
and
agree.
Again,
totally agree.
Yeah, some great points. It goes back to what you both said in the beginning, and that is practicing with purpose. I think if you get out there and you're working on things and you're practicing with and developing a consistency, and again, it may not be, no golfer hits every shot perfectly. So, if you think that you're going to suddenly, reinvent the wheel and you're going to be perfect out there, by tweaking this or tweaking that out in the golf course, well, it's just not going to happen. And that's why the pros don't do that. Even the pros sometimes will go out there and, you think, oh, well, man, they're hitting them straight all the time and they're hitting them perfect. Well, that's just not the case. Even they have some missteps in that way. The difference is they play enough and they practice enough that if they do something differently, 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10, they know what it is that they did wrong because they're so in tune and understand their game. You're not going to see them top it. You're not going to see them, put a 35-yard slice on the ball. But if their intent was to draw the ball and instead they push it, well, they know exactly what they've done and they know how to correct it. But they're not making actual mechanical swing changes along the way. And again, they commit to it when they stand over that ball and they say, okay, I've got to go over, water here and there's a bunker on the right. I know I've got to clear that. They know the yardage. They know where the direction the wind's coming from. They've made a commitment. They've assessed the situation, and then they get up there and just do it. And that's the difference really between amateur players and our better players is that they know that once they've gathered the information and they have assessed what shot they need at hand, they're going to do their best to accomplish that, whereas the high handicap or the amateur golfers are still got doubt and a lot of misinformation floating in the old bread box upstairs, and they just don't know what to do. And they freeze over the ball, and that's when all kinds of things to happen. Sue, I'm going to come back to you. Another point is, again, and this sort of dials into having sort of a safety shot, if you will. And what I mean by that is developing a safety shot. Tiger even had that. I mean, he had several of them, but a lot of times he would have a fallback shot too. You would see him hit a 2-iron off the tee because he knew he needed to put it in position. So if he didn't feel his driver was going to be the best shot to handle at that particular hole, he'd pull out his 2-iron, or he would pull something else out and he would do that. And those were his go-to shots. I think a lot of players need to find, and it may not necessarily be a shot, it may be even a club that they're most comfortable with. If they get in a situation, that's their fallback. If they don't feel comfortable in the shot, they can reassess and say, I'm going to fall back. Help me walk through that so that our players out there understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that, when you're struggling out there, I think you always need to have a safe place and a safe club. And I teach my players about loft because loft is your friend. And most of the time, people are trying to hit too much club, and that's another reason why they kind of get themselves in trouble. And so I always tell them, I said, well, loft is your friend. So I explain to them that if you're hitting a driver and the driver is 1 degree open, you're going to hit a fade slice. But if you hit a 3-wood off the tee and you have 1 degree, that ball's going to go a lot straighter because the spin is different. And the same thing with their iron. So if you have a little bit more loft on your clubs, or choosing a club that has a little bit more loft, it's going to be more forgiving. Even if you make the error of a face open or a face close, you'll still keep the ball in play. And I think you just have to educate golfers in that way and let them understand that not only is it a safe club, but it's a very smart choice. Many times,
right,
is to pick the club that's going to keep you in position rather than take a club that you don't know where it's going to go. So I think it's just educating the golfers about loft and yeah, the safe club, absolutely. You always want to have that go-to club so that you can always go to it. You can feel very comfortable about it, because I think what happens is people play from the mindset of fear versus confidence. And if you're fearful over the ball, you're using the wrong club, and you have the wrong attitude. You have the wrong belief system. So if you have a go-to club, and it's amazing to me when I talk to players and I say, so what's your favorite club? And they'll pull it out of their bag, and let's say it's a 5-wood or something. And I said, what's your least favorite club? And they'll pull another club out. I said, what's the difference between these two clubs? And I'll say, and they're like, well, one's longer, one has one more loft, or whatever it may be. I said, who's swinging it? You are. Okay. So what's the difference between your mindset between your favorite club and your least favorite club? What's the difference in your mindset? Because that's the big difference. Because they don't trust themselves when they're over a club or over a ball that that the club that's not comfortable with. And really, it's just a shift of a mindset and to have a belief. And I know that what happens, they say, well, I don't hit this very well. And I said, but you're basing your belief system on what you've done before. So you have a collection of mistrust because you've seen this happen. I said, versus the club that you trust yourself with, what's the difference in your mindset? And they're like, well, I know I can hit it. And I said, well, you just said, so I'll say to them, I said, what did you just say to me? Well, I know I can hit it. Whereas when you get your least favorite club in your bag or you're in your hand, what do you say to yourself? And they usually say, I don't know what I'm going to do with this.
Yeah,
so
they can't hit it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they can't hit it. Yeah, and so it's a mindset and it's a belief system. But again, there are some, less skilled players, and that's why I always tell them, I said, let's go to a little bit more lofted club. And that's usually what happens is most players will hit better shots with a little bit of more lofted club, because the ball, the ball's spin rate is different, and the ball stays more in line, with their target or in line with the fairway. So, but it's a little bit of a mindset, totally, when you have a least favorite club versus your favorite club.
Right. Well said. You're exactly right. And it goes back to what we just talked about a minute ago, and that's commitment too. And again, they're unable to commit to something because they're not comfortable or they don't feel consistent with that particular club. And I agree with that. thank God for the invention of the hybrid, because that was a club
Yeah.
that I think a lot of players really grapple to, especially players that struggle with their driver or even some of their fairway woods. A hybrid's a pretty handy club to have to hit off the tee,
That's
because
right.
it's very forgiving, again, higher loft, and it still goes a pretty good distance for most golfers. I mean, I've used it many times myself. You get out on a short par 4 even, and, I know I can drive the green, but again, there might be some trouble on either side or even out in the middle, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to take that risk, so I'll pull out a hybrid club and just put myself in position and have a nice approach shot to the green, and set myself up either for a nice birdie or worst case scenario par. So I think it's doing that is having that go-to shot, or in this case, a go-to club, I think is extremely important for particularly for amateurs. And believe it or not, a lot of pros do that as well. People don't always hear that or don't realize that, but they do that. They have favorite clubs or a favorite shot that they have in the bag that they know they can go to whenever they get in a scenario that they're not comfortable with. They know they can depend on that. It's reliable, and it helps get them through many difficult situations. Brandon, I want to bring back to you something a little bit different, and that is the term one shot at a time. And again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I'll open it up just a little bit for you. A lot of players, again, get into this mindset. They get up there, they're thinking about the past, they're thinking about the future, they're not thinking about now. Walk us through one shot at a time, what we mean by that.
Well, I mean, I think it's a mindset, right? I mean, Sue just talked a lot about the mindset of a favorite club versus a not favorite club. I mean, you have to understand that when the club's moving at 85 miles an hour, you have no control. Like, you just don't. And so all you can do is plan. Notice I've said plan about 7 times since we started this call, right? That means it's going to be on a test, right? It means it's important.
Right.
All you can do is plan, right? And then do your best to execute that plan, right? And so let me give you a great example, okay? And so let's just say that your plan was to hit it short right of the hole, okay? Let's say it's a par 3, and your plan was to miss it short right of the hole, okay? And you make a bad golf swing, and you end up long right of the hole. Well, isn't your plan to still get it short right of the hole? Like no. Just because you hit it long and right doesn't mean that the plan has changed. Like, you still need to hit it there. That's still the best place to make the putt from. So no matter what you did the last shot, or no matter what the putt looks like, your job is still to get it short right of the hole. That, to me, is the epitome of one shot at a time. I mean, my job is to do X. What I did on the last shot, or what I'm going to have to do on the next shot, has no bearing whatsoever on what my job is for this shot.
Right.
And I'm going to do my best to execute it. If I don't execute it, then I'll just go up to the next one and I'll figure out what I have to do to get back on plan. If I do execute it, then I'll just walk up and I'll figure out what the next step in the plan is, and I'll try to execute that. What happened before doesn't matter. It has no bearing at all, and that's the mistake I think most amateurs, less skilled golfers, as we're calling them on this program, that's the mistake I think they make. They either allow what happened on the last swing to influence what they're going to do on this swing, or they're thinking about what they have to do instead of what is in front of them, right? And I think those two mistakes are when the one shot at a time rule gets broken and things go chaos, right? Things go into just complete chaotic disarray. What you did before or what you're getting ready to do next has no bearing on what you have to do now. I bet I say that 10 times a day teaching golf.
Totally agree.
Yeah, again, what a lot of players don't understand is once you hit the shot, obviously, as you said, you have to come in with a plan. What's your plan for this hole, whatever that might be. Once you've hit that initial shot, that shot's over with. Now, if it's on target, if your plan has been executed properly, then you're okay. You move on to the next step, as you said, in your plan. But if you've now mishit it and it's somewhere else, then your next shot is not, well, what I just did, but what do I need to get myself back to the position I originally intended to. And I think what, as you said, Brandon, I think what a lot of amateurs do is, I always equate this, and I've mentioned this several times on the show, is I equate it going to the airport. Everybody brings, baggage to the airport. We bring our luggage and so forth. And golfers do that as well, but what happens is they just keep dragging the same baggage to every shot. So every bad shot that they've hit for the last 6 holes, they're bringing. Well, I sliced it, on that last hole, so I'm probably going to slice it again, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, and they get off of their plan. So now suddenly they're reactive to everything and not really sticking with the plan. So if you were going, as you said, Brandon, if you're going short right and you hit it long right instead, well, that's okay. As long as you haven't put yourself in trouble and you've got an easy shot, now you want to get yourself back and put it in the position that you originally wanted to. The difference is you got a little bit less distance to go, so it's a little bit easier shot than your first one. So, again, as long as you're sticking with your plan, then you're going to ultimately see over time that your scores are going to start coming down because you're sticking with the plan. Great analogy.
Go ahead. I'm going to share a real quick story with you that I gave a student the other day. Now, this was a competitive player, right? But I think that the thought and the theory applies. If I laid out 30 feet of 2x6 lumber, I think everybody listening knows what 2x6 lumber is. It's about 5.5 inches wide. Okay. If I laid out 30 feet of it and said, I want you to walk from one end of this lumber to the other end without your feet touching the grass, no person old enough to walk would have any trouble with that. Right? My 3-year-old daughter would have no trouble with that. Okay? You could probably, as an adult, throw a basketball back and forth, chew gum, and sing a song all at the same time while you were walking back and forth, right? Well, now I'm going to take that same 30 feet of 2x6 and I'm going to put it over a 3,000-foot canyon. Well, what's changed? Nothing has changed, right? You still have the job of just walking from one end to the other end, right? Except everything has changed because now you could fall to your death. And so the mindset completely shifts from walk from point A to point B to don't fall to my death. It's the same task. Nothing has changed. Right? You won't have any more trouble walking over that 30 feet of lumber above that cliff as you would if it were on the ground, except your mind completely changes the task. And to me, that's what one shot at a time is, right? We let our past experiences or the fear of what might happen in the future dictate how we move in the moment. And that's not playing one shot at a time.
Yeah, that's a really, really great example. And, again, if you look at the pros as a good example, they don't focus when they look at a hole or they look at a shot. They're not focusing on the trouble. They know the trouble's there. Obviously, they're cognizant of it, but they're not focusing on it. They have a specific target that they're going for, and that's what they're going to execute. And if it's a 150-yard shot to a green, and they know the pin's in the back, and it's a safe shot for them to hit, then they're going to hit it. If it's not a safe shot, then they're going to position somewhere else. They're going to pick a target somewhere else on the green that they know that they're going to be able to execute with confidence. And, again, they know that there's trouble around, but they're not focusing on it. It's the same thing as your example there. If you have the same shot, or in this case you're walking on that 30-foot 2x6 lumber, on a flat surface, you're fine with it. But now you put a scenario where there's a problem, where there's a hill or a valley underneath or a canyon, and now all of a sudden you've created a problem and a trouble that, I guess, brings in that fear for a lot of people, which is understandable. But again, that's the difference between the pros and the amateurs, is they're able to block that out and stick with the task at hand. And that's a great example, Brandon, of a one-shot-at-a-time approach. Sue, I'm going to come back to you on this one here, and this is another area that I think falls into sort of one of the key points to really helping to improve score, and we see this example in so many cases, in fact, many cases, and that is not having the right equipment suited for your game. We see a lot of amateurs, whether it's they've got some hand-me-down club, or whether they've gone out and they bought something because they see a pro playing it on TV and they think that's the club for them. They're not fitted, what have you. Again, let's talk about some of the pitfalls of not having the right equipment to take with you out in golf.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm a Henry Griffiths professional fitter, so I educate my players right away because just let them understand that, centerness of contact is what you're going to get. You're going to get, your best shots out of. So if the clubs are too long, you're going to hit them on the hosel. If they're too short, you're going to hit them on the toe. So how does those mishits affect distance? It's everything. And then of course, when they're making good swings and they just came up with some equipment that maybe, what I get a lot of women, they get their hand-me-downs from their husbands or their boyfriends, and it's like they're either too stiff or too long, or the grips are too big or whatever. So you just have to educate people and let them understand there's not one professional tour player that plays with ill-fitted equipment. Not one. Mm-hmm. And right. So you have to educate. We have to educate our amateurs the same way, because if they want the most out of their game, then you have to have the equipment that fits you. Now, it doesn't have to be the most expensive, but it does need to fit you. Mm-hmm. And, it's just like I give the analogy is like if you're a skier, you're not going to go and get two sizes up in boots or in bindings, and you go down a black diamond ski slope. You're going to kill yourself, and you're not going to have a good experience. Right. So it's the same thing. Right. And it's just, I think the golf industry needs to do a better job of educating the amateurs about fitting, that it's important. And once they understand that they do get a fitted club in their hand and they start hitting a golf shot, because a lot of my players have great swings, but they'll, playing too stiff or too soft of a shaft and the ball's going everywhere. And once you educate them and then you get them in with just one club that fits them, they're like, oh, that's what this feels like. And then you just show them, there's a centerness of contact. Put a piece of nice face tape on the club face, and they're looking at it like, oh, that's what the centerness of the face feels like. So it's just, again, I think it's just educating them about having the right equipment. Like I said, it doesn't have to be really expensive. It just needs to be the right equipment for them. And everybody's different, and that's why you get a lot of people coming to the range with ill-fitted equipment and the wrong size grips, and the clubs are too long, or whatever it may be. And I think we just need to educate the players a little bit more about, or I should say a lot more, in regards to, you deserve to have fitted clubs just like a professional. You absolutely deserve it. So if you want the most out of your golf swing, then let's put you into something that that matches you as a player and you as a person, rather than just like, well, I'm not really sure what I want to do. And that's unfortunate too, is because a lot of beginners come into the game with very poor equipment because they don't want to spend the money right away, and then they struggle. And like I said, there's their foundation. Where are they getting their foundation from? Well, they're getting their foundation from ill-fitted clubs. So I think it's very important that we keep educating golfers to have fitted clubs.
I think that's a great point. And Brandon, I'm going to just sort of pose the same question for you, but I'm going to change it just slightly a little bit, because I know that a lot of what Sue just discussed, I know you agree with as well. But in addition to making sure that you're fitted properly, I think the type of equipment that you have can play a factor. For instance, I'll give you an example. A lot of times I'll see amateurs coming out, again, maybe they've gotten a hand-me-down or they've seen something that a tour pro is playing. I think, well, that's the club for me. And maybe they're playing with more of a a forged, what we refer to as a forged or a blade type club, when maybe they need something a little bit more forgiving. And then there's also the types of clubs that they have in their bag. Maybe they need less of this type of club and maybe a little bit more of that. Maybe you can pack that in nicely for us, what we need to, for our skill level, what we need to be looking at putting in our golf bag. We've got 14 clubs, but maybe some of them we don't need. Maybe we can change them out. What are your thoughts here?
Well, sorry, just making sure I wasn't on mute. I always tell people when we're doing fitting, there are 3 factors that you really need to consider, right, in no particular order: performance, look, and feel, right? You could argue price is a fourth, but most of your major manufacturers are going to run similarly enough in price to where that's not a concern. But if you want to add fourth, price in there, and you can. And then I say this to people: how you prioritize the 3 is entirely up to you. But as your coach, I'm always going to prioritize importance first. Prioritize performance first. Right? I'm going to put performance above look and feel. Right? Now, marketing and what the tour boys play and what your buddy at the golf, at your local club plays or just bought, or that really good handicap golfer, really low handicap golfer that just beats you in the club championship, what he plays, those can all influence. But if you just keep it simple, performance, look, and feel, and if you put performance first, usually that takes care of that, right? Typically what I do is I describe in any given manufacturer, I say, look, the question is really not which manufacturer, Titleist, Callaway, Ping, TaylorMade, whatever.
Right.
The better question, or the bigger question, is, they all make a good car, okay? They all make a good truck. The bigger question is, do I live in the city and do I need a truck? Or do I really need a car? Or do I work on the farm and I really need a truck instead of a 2-seater or 4-seater sedan, right? And so let's figure out what your game needs first, right? And that would be the model, whether it's the more forgiving model or the middle of the road or the really unforgiving, not unforgiving, but less forgiving, smaller top line, less offset type model. Let's figure that out first, and then we can have a discussion. That's the performance piece. Then we can have a discussion on look and feel, right? And so if we decide that we need a game improvement iron, then fine, let's get a game improvement iron, and then we can hit some different manufacturers or different brands to find out which one looks and feels the best. I think when you educate folks what the clubs can do for them, I find that it replaces any preconceived notion they might have had coming in. Now, you've always got your vanity player, right?
Right.
That has this idea that I'm gonna learn, my golf swing is going to morph itself into being better because I have a harder to hit iron, right? I personally don't subscribe to that theory. There are a few out there that do. I don't personally subscribe to that theory. I think you need to find something that allows you to perform the best and then figure out the one that looks and feels the best. As for the, what set makeup to play, I always try to let data make that decision for me, right? I mean, I'll let them hit their golf clubs on a launch monitor and let's find out. Some of them just don't believe that their 3-iron goes as far as their 4-iron goes as far as their 5-iron, and their 6-iron only goes 5 yards farther or shorter. Some people just don't believe that until you show them, right? And so I love doing that on a launch monitor. I know not everyone has access to a launch monitor, but there are ways you can do it even without a launch monitor. If you go out on the golf course late in the evening, you could have them hit 5 balls and then go to the 5 and measure the distance and get an average, right? There are ways you can do that. But a lot of people just don't understand. And when you take hitting a shot into a hole out of the equation and you just have them hit a ball and make a golf swing, right, without any sort of guiding it because you're trying to be accurate or all the other crazy things that golfers do, then you start to get some true numbers on how far clubs really fly. And then you can start to have that conversation. When I'm ordering golf clubs, for students, I usually don't recommend ordering any higher than about a a 5-iron, maybe even a 6-iron,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the player. And then we're going to find out how far, when we get them, then we're going to find out how far that 6-iron or 5-iron goes. And we're going to look at some numbers, and we're going to find out, you know, some launch and some ball speed characteristics. And then if we decide we need to order a 4-iron or a 3-iron or a hybrid or a fairway wood, we can order them after the fact. Because as Sue knows, you only get 7 irons in your fit cart, right? And so
That's
you kind of
right.
have to make an assumption based on some 7-iron numbers, and that's not always easy to do. So instead of going ahead and ordering the 4-iron, only to find out that we needed a hybrid instead, and now we're $175 deep in an iron we'll never use, let's order it next. Yes, it might take a little longer to get the club in. You know, you won't get your full set for a couple of weeks or maybe a month, but when we get everything in, we'll know that it's perfect for you. And so that's generally how I handle that.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing, and I'm a firm believer, especially for a really early beginning. You know, 2020, despite the pandemic, has really been good. Golf has certainly benefited in many ways. Getting a lot of new people coming out to the game, and they don't really know where to start. They don't know where to begin. And I always say, begin at the beginning. And I look at it this way: even though we're allowed to have 14 clubs in the bag, if you're a beginning golfer, you don't necessarily have to have 14 clubs. You can start with maybe 7 or 8 clubs, but they're the right clubs for you based on your ability. And because I think it's a lot easier, and that this is really kind of what you were alluding to a bit, Brandon, and that is it's easier to add if needed. If your game supports to have a hybrid or a longer iron in your bag, then you can add, then to subtract. To go out and buy a set of clubs and find out 2 or 3 of them don't fit your particular game. So I agree with you. I think let's get out. Let's start with sort of a basic set. Let's look at, make sure the numbers are matching up quite right, and then add if you need it as you go along and as you improve and become a better player. But, you know, this is an area, I think, guys, that so many of our amateur golfers fall short on. And they could probably save a ton of strokes if they would just go out and get fitted properly. Because, again, they get out there and they're playing with equipment that's not very well suited for them. They've got clubs in the bag that they can't really hit very well and are not really appropriate for their game, but they've got them there because they know they can have the 14, so they're buying them anyways, and they get out there and it's a mishmash and they're confused. They don't know what to do. So I think getting fitted and working with your pro and help going through that process together, and then obviously you adapt and change as your game changes and develops over time. You can add or swap out with something different as appropriate. But I think getting a good start, a good footing, if you will, with a good set of clubs that match your game, not somebody else's game, Brent, as you pointed out, I agree with that. I think that's going to get you well on your way to lowering your scores. And Lord only knows we got to start moving these handicaps down because that adds to a lot of frustration. And we want people to get out there and have fun in their game and enjoy it, and they certainly can't do that if they're not getting off to a good start. So I want to thank both of you guys. Did a great job tonight, as always, with our discussion tonight on Coach's Corner, and I appreciate it. I'm going to give you each just a moment if you want to let the fans know the best way that they can reach out to you if they have any questions or they just want to get in touch with you. Maybe you can help them with their game. So ladies first, Sue, if you want to go ahead, and then Brandon.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. Yeah, you can reach me. I have a website. It's called SueEagerGolf.com, and you can order my international best-selling book on the website. It's called Change Your Brain, Change Your Game. And there's an actual performance journal that is a companion journal with that as well. And, or you can reach me at my phone number is 480-392-6563. I'm up in the director of instruction and the head golf professional now up in Payson Golf Club up in Payson, Arizona. So come up and visit us. It's beautiful up here. It's about 85 degrees right now. So
oh, wow.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks. It's beautiful up here. So yeah, thanks for having me, and really enjoyed the conversation tonight.
Well, thank you, Sue. As always, it's a pleasure. Brandon, go ahead.
Well, Ted, everything I have out there in the world is under Stooksbury Golf. Every single time we do this, I make the joke that having Stooksbury as a last name is the single worst and best thing that you could ever ask for. It's really hard to say and make dinner reservations, but there's not another one out there. And so everything I have is under Stooksbury Golf. And so whether that's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, the website's even StooksburyGolf.com. I sell all my books on Amazon unless you want a signed copy. And in that case, I'm happy to do it direct. You can just reach out to me via my website. I'm happy to send anybody a signed copy in the mail. Otherwise, you can check them both out on Amazon, the putter book or the wedge book. That's about it. Sue, I enjoyed the conversation. I don't know you personally, but it certainly sounds like you've got a great program and definitely know your stuff. So I enjoyed the time. Ted, thanks as always.
Thanks,
all right.
Brandon.
I appreciate both of you. Much continued success, and I look forward to the next time you join me here on Golf Talk Live's Coach's Corner. Have a great weekend, guys, and I'll talk to you real soon.
Thanks, Ted.
See you, Ted.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, that was Sue Weger and Brandon Stooksbury joining me on the Coach's Corner panel. I'm going to have my very special guest, Dr. Bernacki, join me here in just a moment. But first, here's a couple of quick messages from some of our sponsors.
This edition of Golf Talk Live is brought to you by Golf Pal, the best place to find only the finest in golf training aids and accessories. Get in on some great deals on leading products such as Down Under Board, Rapsodo, Golf Slingshot, and more. Visit golfpal.golf today. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. Golf Pal. We're serious about your game.
The following ad is sponsored by Golf Tips Magazine.
Are you tired of being short off the tee? And what about those 3 putts? Forget about it. It's time you got serious about your game. Golf Tips, the most in-depth magazine in the industry. For over 30 years, Golf Tips has delivered expert content such as the latest golf instruction from America's top pros, simple-to-follow practice and game improvement drills, fitness and mental game tips, equipment, training aids, accessory and apparel reviews, golf destinations and travel tips for every budget, and so much more. Don't miss a single issue. Go to golftipsmag.com and subscribe today.
All right, welcome back, everybody, and I'm excited once again to have my very special guest, Dr. Bernacki. He is the president of the Golf Heritage Society. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, and then I'm going to bring him on. We've got a few things to talk and share with you tonight, this evening on the show. Dr. Bernacki is a community-based, self-employed family physician for more than 35 years who, of course, loves this great game of golf. He plays in a variety of different ways, including with hickory, steel, and some of the modern-era shafts, and always with, as he puts, a period-appropriate golf ball. Dr. Bernacki also is active in youth development and drug prevention activities, having recently completed a leadership role with the First Tee in Pittsburgh. He also, as mentioned, serves the membership of the Golf Heritage Society currently as their president of the organization. So please welcome back to the show, Dr. Bernacki. Good evening, Dr. Bernacki. How are you?
I'm doing great, Ted. I'd love it if you'd call me either Bern or Dr. Bern. We'll get along just fine.
All right. I will call you Dr. Bern. How's that? I appreciate you coming back and well, listen, I always look at it this way. I always love, having this time with my guests, and I had you on earlier this year, and we talked about, the Golf Heritage Society, and I thought what we would do, just for some of the new listeners that may be tuning in tonight, maybe we could just do a brief little recap, and I know there's some specific things that you want to talk about tonight on the show. So just tell everybody just a little bit about the Golf Heritage Society, what it is, how it got started, and when it got started.
Great. Thanks, Ted. Well, we're a organization that loves golf. We started out 50 years ago as the Golf Collector Society, and many of our people have amazing collections of high-end things and low-end things. And for those 50 years, that's who we were. And about 3 years ago, we understood that within our ranks, we also had writers, historians, players, coaches, architects, you name it. So we decided to expand the recognition of all of those folks and call ourselves a Golf Heritage Society. So anyone of your listeners who wants to learn more about who we are and what we do, well, go to Golf Heritage, GOLFHERITAGE.org, and you'll see all the many categories of interest around the game of golf. So we endeavor to enjoy the game of golf in 1,000 different ways and invite people to enjoy the history of the game and the events of the game and the people and places. And guess what? We still have all those artifacts, and we know the stories behind the collections we have to be able to really bring to life the history of the game of golf.
Let me ask you, Dr. Bern, just a little bit about that for those that maybe are not familiar, maybe especially some of our younger audience that may be not familiar with some of the history. Maybe you could just share a couple of things about the history of the game that maybe the average folk that may not know about golf. Maybe you could share a couple of stories with us, just a little bit about the actual heritage of it. So go ahead and I'll let you go.
Sure. Well, we have a lot of enjoyment looking at these collectibles. We also love to get together and exchange stories. And, a lot of us will have a book collection and use them as reference. There's reference books on collecting. There's, books, you name it. What's coming up next? Well, the Curtis Cup's coming up very shortly. The Ryder Cup's coming up this year. And, of course, all the majors. And a lot of our folks have become authorities on different aspects of the game. The Ryder Cup, and boy, know a whole lot about it, have certain collectibles around that, like the members' badges. I have a golf bag for one of the players, and I took it to my club, Edgewood Country Club. It's a Ross course, and we put that out on the sign-up area for our 4th of July, and I had red, white, and blue different kind of club head covers on it, and it really livened up the event, and everybody was in the spirit just differently because of that. Ted, last week, actually it was 3 weeks ago, I was in Ohio, and I went to a place called Clearview Golf Course. Clearview Golf Course is in the shadow of the Hall of Fame, the Football Hall of Fame. Everybody knows about that. And, it's exciting. We went there. That golf course was built by hand by a gentleman named Bill Powell. And William Powell was a great player, a man of color, and he played golf in high school. And when he went to World War II, they found out that he was a good golfer, so he played a little golf. And, I think he drove the Jeep for the general, and they did pretty good. And then when he got home, he had a difficult time getting on a golf course because of his color. So he was unabashed. He borrowed some money, bought some property, and built a golf course. He taught his daughter, Renee, how to play golf. Renee became the second woman of color to play on the LPGA Tour. Renee Powell is in the Hall of Fame, and so is Dad. We visited there 3 weeks ago to do something unique. We took a couple of foursomes. One played modern clubs, and right behind them we had a foursome that played, two of us played hickory, one played Pyratone, and one played the classic clubs of Palmer, Player, Nicklaus, that era. That guy was me. Two players played hickory. We had a really cool time doing that, and that's the kind of event. Someone brought a lot of collectibles, and everybody that came learned from each other. And, of course, we all got to meet a Hall of Fame golfer, Renee Powell.
Yeah, Renee's actually been a guest on my show over the past years, and very, very unique and very interesting story, of course, about her father and his journey and his love of the game. And obviously he passed that on to her, and she's enjoyed, even to this day, still enjoys a very successful career and giving back to others and helping to bring others into the game. So what a great story, and thank you for sharing that with my audience. I want to ask you, before we get on to some of the different events that you guys have, about, just to go back to sort of the collectibles a little bit. So just so the audience understands, now, are these collectibles not that people sort of donate to the Golf Heritage Society, or is it something that the Society buys from them to keep in the collection, or how does that work?
That's a great question. And, the Golf Heritage Society does not have a headquarters or a location. Technically, we use my medical office and a storage area for some of our mailing in magazines. We publish a quarterly magazine. It's called The Golf. It's fabulous. It talks about articles of history, artifacts, collectibles. It's really, really cool. And we highlight different things like coming up when the U.S. Open was coming up. We'll have historical pieces that link current players to the past players, and it's a lot of fun when we do that. We really enjoy it. We have some incredible authorities and authors that do that. But anyway, when we have these collectibles, they're in private collections. And Ted,
right.
People ask me, well, not everybody can afford to have a medal won by the U.S. Open Amateur, or things like that. But if you think about it, everybody has golf collectibles. The scorecard that you kept from the first U.S. Open venue that you played, and the first time that you played with mom or dad on a golf course, and the pencils, those things, we call them things that are important to me. They have sentimental value, and they're just as important to the collector as the economic, monetary, high-end collectibles that are sold for a lot of money on auctions. So it can be the history that's important, the personal significance that's important, or the rareness of it that makes it a very important economic collectible. But Ted, the collectibles among our society are in the private collections of folks. Now, we would love it to have establish a regional museum where the golf interested can donate to us. We are talking about that. We're working with at least one university that has some space for us, and that may become a reality so that people can house, show, and exhibit something that was in their family for a long time, or that has specific significance to the game of golf that they were able to donate for the world to see. So that's what we do. That's how we do it. When we get together, of course, when we have our annual meeting, now called the National Convention, we bring a lot of things, and we have a trade show, and there people can view, learn, and even purchase items that are affordable to them, not always the high-end things, but unique and interesting collectibles, and get started if they wanted to be see things that would be interesting to them.
Now, you have you mentioned the GHS, we'll call that for short, National Convention. That's coming up September 29th through to October 3rd of this year. Now, obviously, last year, if I recall from our conversation, obviously because of the pandemic, I believe you didn't have that last year. Is that correct?
We got canceled. We were going to be in Pittsburgh,
right,
and we canceled.
Right.
We deferred because we're going to be in Pittsburgh this year.
Right. So you're having it this year, and this gives an opportunity for a lot of the collectors, obviously, to come together, and it's essentially a trade show. Give us an idea of some of the items, particularly that one might find there. You mentioned, I know, a couple of collectibles now, but some particularly that are maybe of interest to you or interest to some of the other members of the Golf Heritage Society that are going to be there, just to give you the folks an idea of some things that they can expect to see there if they want to come and experience that.
I'm going to answer that question first, and I'm going to talk about all the variety of different things that we're going to do in this 4-day weekend. So, Ted, imagine yourself walking into a grand ballroom of a hotel and seeing 100 tables with every kind of golf item collectible and ranging from, the very first things of the game of golf to the modern. That's what you'll see there. We have people who collect balls and are authorities on it, clubs, putters, ceramics, medals, trophies, silver, paper products such as magazines. They're golf-centered from way back. They're so cool to look at. And different things like programs for all of the Masters programs or the U.S. Open programs. And the person who wanders through there has an endless opportunity to pick the brains of the collectors who have these items to show, trade, and sell. So that's what you would see when you walk in that room.
It's very, very interesting because there's so many different, as you said, there's such a variety of things there to see. What, for you personally, is some of the most interesting things that you've seen over the years through the society? What are some of the items particularly that really caught your attention?
The artwork around the game of golf is just fabulous. You see portraits, you see photography, you see landscape. So this year at our convention, appreciating the number of members that we have that are golf artists. So many folks gravitate to the golf art. We decided that as part of our convention, we're going to show and illustrate golf art. We're going to have a seminar with 5 in-person artists and 2 world-known artists who will probably call in, Zoom in. We're not sure how that's going to work yet because they want to be there, but with COVID, they're a little older and really cannot travel. Sure. But we're going to represent their art, and it's going to be really something. So people would recognize the name Linda Hartough, Hartough, and Linda's artwork is notable. It's highly sought after. Originals are incredibly valuable, and they're all wonderful. They just captivate you. You could stare at it for a long time. So we all enjoy that. Personally, I've had a journey where my collectibles started out picking up a ball here or a club there, and then I found out that some people play with these implements, and it was fun. I went out and banged a ball around. We buy these period balls. They're replicas because if you hit a gutty ball, it would fall apart because it's 120 years old. So you can't play with that. Some of the clubs we play with are that old, but the irons are really solidly made. They're heavy, so they're not going to be injured. But at certain times, we'll break a shaft on a 90-year-old club, and we'll just have to replace it. That's all. So we do that, and we have folks that have the skills and ability to remake a club and get it out there and ready to play for many more holes. So we do a lot of these things when we gather. So it's a lot of fun. So I personally have enjoyed putting together sets of clubs from different eras, Ted. So I have a pre-1900 smooth face set. They're kind of heavy. I'll play them next week at Foxburg, Foxburg, in Pennsylvania, off of Route 80, below Erie. And it is the 13th time that we've gathered there. Foxburg is the oldest continuous club in America. It is a 9-hole course, and we go around 4 times over 2 days, and we play different divisions. The open division will play a replica gutty ball, solid ball, with those smooth face clubs. We have another division will play post-1900 with a period replica wound ball, a Haskell, Haskell ball. And that's a lot of fun. The ball is a little livelier. It goes a little further. The little older players kind of gravitate to that game. So that's pretty much a hickory tournament and gathering. We will have folks who will bring collectibles and clubs for show and sale. So everything that we do is always fellowship and learning opportunity and interaction. And usually you can pick up a club or an item that makes your collection or your play set that much more valuable to you. So we have a blast.
So, Dr. Bern, let me go back to the clubs for just a second. You've in your collection, and I'm sure obviously you've seen many other collections out there. When you're talking about clubs, that are 100 years old or 90 years old, obviously there's a big technology gap, for lack of better words, between what we play today and what we, would have played back then. What are some of the things? I mean, you've got a smooth-faced club face that you talk about in that. What kind of an experience, maybe you can explain a little bit about what it feels like playing some of these older clubs compared to what you would play today? Because I don't think a lot of people that, obviously that weren't born back then and never had that experience wouldn't understand. But obviously there is a difference. Maybe just talk a little bit about that for a moment, if you wouldn't mind.
That's a really good question for me to expound on, Ted. These club heads, the irons, they're a little heavier, so you got to slow down and just swing through the ball. But when you're a kid, the club feels awkward. I'm 68. I've been playing since I was 10. That's a lot of years of golf. And I can remember the first time I hit a 7-iron and hit it solid and the ball went up into the air against the sky. I was absolutely hooked. And when I hit any kind of a ball with any kind of a club and I hit it square, I get that same kind of feeling. Now, the modern technology, to your point, is really in that making it a little easier to hit it square and get your distance out of it. The difference is in the technology of those modern irons and in the design and composition of those shafts. They really help out. And it gives an average golfer who doesn't hit it square a reasonable experience. Well, let's wind back the clock 100 years to 1921, and those clubs were manufactured. A lot of companies were over here now, and a lot of the clubs earlier to that came over, and the American companies, your Spaldings, McGregor's, spun off from companies and owners that came over from Scotland and England. And when the players here were hitting those clubs, those were not as forgiving. But I have to tell you, a skilled player, a professional or a good amateur, or, you and me on a good day, Ted, you're an instructor, so you would hit every shot solid. That ball would go. For me, most of my shots, I hit them pretty square. But when you don't hit them, you don't get the forgiveness that you get in the modern club. I really think that's where the technology is the most different.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Obviously, there's much more forgiveness in the clubs that we're playing with today than what they would back then. And I think it's very interesting. There's a lot of tournaments now that you see through a lot of different organizations, including yourselves, obviously, that play a very traditional, what would be considered a traditional hickory or other older clubs out there. And it's very, very interesting. It's more of what I would again call more of a traditional game. Going back to some of its original roots. And I think it'd be very, very interesting for a lot of people that have never seen that or experienced that before to have a better understanding. Because, again, so much has changed. We see what's out there right now, and it's very hard to imagine a player back in 1921 or a golfer back in 1921. It's going to be a much different experience for them than obviously what they're going to see in today's modern game. And I think it's very, very interesting. Some of the changes that have gone on. Sure.
You're right. There's one more point on this. I described really the iron play game in those previous comments just now. But, when you see pictures of the old golf clubs in artwork and in photographs, you notice the wooden heads of those golf clubs. They're kind of like the size of your the treble wood, maybe a little bit shorter, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And Bobby Jones was hitting that ball 250, 280. He was massive in his drives, and these players could play. They could get every ounce of energy out of their ball in their swing with those hickory sticks and solid fruit wood heads. They were small, but it didn't matter because they hit them square and they hit them far. Amazing. That's the hard part. Yeah, gearing yourself down. But I'll say this, Ted. Playing the hickory game, especially off the tee, makes you focus on your drive and swing through the ball better, such that when you're playing your modern equipment with more forgiveness, with your modern swing, you're probably a better player for the experience. So we have fun with the hickories. We don't do it to torture ourselves. My goodness, we're doing it for fun and a unique experience. And we do that with kids, and then we get to talk about who made this club and where and what kind of clothes were they wearing then. And they go online and they start looking up things. It's great fun for them. Yeah, this is all about fun.
Yeah, and you know, it is interesting to learn about the history of really of anything, but you know, in this particular case, we're talking about golf. But you know, a lot of people don't see that. You know, the generations coming up now that are introduced to the game don't really fully, even at the tour level, don't really fully appreciate the differences and the changes in the game from, you know, even 50 years ago, let alone 100. And it's very, very interesting to, you know, get a handle on where the game has and how it has developed over the last, you know, 100 or so years. And as you said, you do, you know, you're teaching those younger generations. I know you shared a story the last time you were here about a young girl, if you recall, and you said that the sort of the experience of her reaction and how she felt about that. And if you recall, if you wanted to share that again with tonight's audience, I'd be more than happy to. Yeah,
it was
please.
Great. Yeah, she was a first tee player, and on the younger side, and she came out, and it was a warm day, and you know, I have the youngsters register. I want them to be serious about it and to know it's a unique and different experience. And they sign in kind of like you'd register for a little tournament, and you know, they name, address, the whole thing. And I asked them some questions. You know, why are you doing this, and what is your intention? And you know, they're looking for a unique experience, and they want to learn, and they want to hold those old clubs in their hand. So off they go in threesomes, and this one particular gal came back. And she had pigtails, and you know, she was kind of worn out and a little bit sweaty, and her glasses were off kilter. So we gave her a cool drink and a cool washcloth and sat her down again. And then we talked to her a little bit. And on the flip side of her application were those questions: why did I do this? What was I hoping to gain? What did I learn? And, you know, what would make it a better experience? And this is pretty much what she said. She said, I wanted to learn, and I wanted to put those old clubs in my hand and see if I could hit them. And then she said, it was really hard at first, but then I got the hang of it. And then I had a lot of fun. And then I started to think about who made this club and where it came from. And I had a million questions with my friends while we did this experience. And, you know, I read that, and it made it worthwhile for me to take the time and bring the clubs together and make the event happen. So these young people really appreciate what we do for them, and we share history through play. It's really a lot of fun.
Well, and I think it's important. I think, you know, as a younger person, you know, she has an opportunity to share and experience something that, you know, is not normally available or present in today's modern age. And sometimes, you know, when you go back and you see where sort of things began in a certain area, and again, in this case, golf, I think it really truly helps you to appreciate the overall game It's not just about getting up there and hitting golf balls and sinking putts and that. It's really about how the equipment's made, how it's developed, who puts the time and the research and development that's gone into it. And, there was a lot that went into it, a lot of trial and error, I'm sure. Obviously now with technology they can do it at much more advanced. But, even back 100 years ago, I mean, they had to research and develop. They had to test equipment, and it was obviously a much different beast back then. But it would be very interesting, I could see, to a youngster particularly, that has those types of questions, to be able to learn from that and to get out there and actually try the equipment and, play with the equipment and have an experience like that, I think is something that's really to be invaluable. Now you have the event,
absolutely.
Right? Sorry, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, I'm going to tell one more quick story, if I may, Ted. We
Sure.
had a first-tee youngster who went out. He was very enthusiastic, but this was a youngster who has a physical, I wouldn't call it a handicap, but he has difficulty physically, and he played the first hole, and it was sort of a slight downhill, about 270 yards, and he turned around and the second hole came back, sort of around the corner, and he came up that hill and he played, and he quietly retreated to the clubhouse, and he watched everybody play, and he enjoyed it. He took notes, and he had a great time doing it. Well, here's what happened next. He got so interested. He had a project at school in like 8th grade, I believe, and he was asked to write a paper. His topic became golf, and old golf and the history of golf. What did he do? This youngster went online, and he contacted old clubs in England and Scotland and started to interact with them. And he became friends with people that were over there, running the show, and they got to know him. So, of course, he wrote a terrific paper. They sent him artifacts from their golf clubs. And, of course, he wrote a wonderful paper from his experience in playing and then being stimulated to go and research history and make friends across the pond over in Scotland and England. How about that for a story? That was amazing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, and see, and that's what I mean is sometimes it just, just sort of planting that little seed, if you will, can open up, the mind of a youngster like that to do that. I mean, that's an incredible thing. And obviously, again, with the advances of technology to be able to interact with somebody, 100 years ago, you couldn't do that. You couldn't contact somebody over there. It would take you months, to write them and get a response, and that now with a click of a button or a mouse, what have you, you can get on there and you can interact with people. And the fact that this young man, took the initiative based on his experience, with you and your group, was able to, even have a greater experience by reaching out to somebody else, that had, some information that helped him in his paper. And I think that's a fantastic story. And see, this is where I would love to see more and more of today's players, and I don't mean just recreational golfers, but even today's players, dig a little deeper into the history of the game. I mean, it's tragic, really, because I've had the pleasure of interviewing a number of LPGA and even PGA players, and certainly they know who Nicklaus was, they know Tiger, they've heard of Arnold Palmer and some of the other, Nancy Lopez, but beyond that, they don't really know a lot about the history of the game, and I think a lot of them would have even a greater appreciation. So I'd like to, I'd like to see more of them, take that plunge, if you will, like some of the youngsters you just referred to. Yeah. I think they would have even a greater appreciation. Yeah. Go ahead.
We have a relationship with the USGA. They know us. They love us. Our members do research and use the libraries and such of the USGA. And they're regular people. They're not academics. They're just interested. And that's a great resource, the USGA. We're developing a relationship with the PGA and the PGA players because we have so many resources of history, of people, places, and things, I like to say, that we can and should be a valuable partner with them. And many of the young professionals that I interact with at different clubs. They gravitate when I show up in Hickory outfit with Hickory clubs, period dress. And I always stop and talk. I was in New Hampshire, for a Hickory golf event, and it rained cats and dogs right at the end, and the junior golf league got interrupted. So the youngsters were huddled in the lobby, and we all came in soaking wet. But I just pulled out two clubs. I pulled out a sand wedge that is the heaviest club that I've ever held, and I put it in the hands of the kids and had them pass it around. And they all were fascinated with the design and the heaviness of it. And a couple of grandfathers were in the crowd, and we were talking about how old that club was, and it was older than that person's dad. And it became quite an interesting experience for those 20 minutes, half hour that we were all waiting for the rain to stop. It was a lot of fun. So, that's what we do when we have an opportunity. We share.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just to let the folks know they're tuning into the show tonight, I'm going to just give them some information about your upcoming, the National Convention is going to be held September 29th to October 3rd at the Doubletree Inn in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. And there's a public is invited to attend the Golf Heritage Society trade show, which is taking place on Saturday, October 2nd at the hotel from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Entry for the public is free, and there is no registration required. And if you want to get more information to attend, you can reach out through their website at the golfheritage.org. Dr. Bern, as we get ready to wrap up here, is there any other thoughts or maybe another story that you'd like to share with us before we close out?
I have one for you, Ted. The people that come to our convention, we're going to play golf as our championship. We're going to play the Hickory Championship that we're famous for, and also we're going to play a classic clubs, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player era, and we're going to have folks that are playing moderns as well. So we call that heritage golf, when you play whatever and you can enjoy it. Well, we decided that since we're going to be on Latrobe Country Club, home of Arnold Palmer, I know I'm going to play clubs that Arnold played and play classic clubs. That's going to be a no-brainer for me. Other people are going to play in the Hickory event. Well, we also decided that there's a gazillion Arnold Palmer collectibles, high-end and low-end, unique and common, and we're going to have a display. So the public in western Pennsylvania, the tri-state area, will have the opportunity for several days to come and see different of our folks together, their Arnold Palmer collectibles. It'll be really cool. We even had a guy who has a major collection. I called his house, and I set up a Zoom call. And for those of you who are tired of Zoom meetings, you would love this one, because he walked around his house talking about his personal Arnold Palmer collections, many of which were given and signed to him by Arnold Palmer personally. That Zoom was recorded and saved and is part of our now collection and archive that we're building for all the great stuff we're doing using modern technology. Isn't that cool?
That's fantastic. What a great opportunity to see. I mean, so many golfers, even young and old, all knew who, of course, the late Mr. Palmer was and his story. And you're right, he had quite the collection of different memorabilia from golf, from equipment to other things as well. So for this gentleman to have acquired a good many things in his collection, to be able to share that, what a great opportunity. And the fact that you're playing on essentially his home course in the upcoming event, that's a great opportunity as well. I think a lot of people love Arnold so much, and he was really a consummate gentleman. I didn't have obviously the pleasure of interviewing him, unfortunately, but I did meet him once years ago at an event, and he certainly was everything wonderful that everybody has said to him. So what a great thing, and I look forward to actually seeing that clip once it's available. I would love to know when that becomes available through your archives and be able to see that. I think it would be very interesting. But well, Dr. Bern, I want to thank you very, very much. And also one other quick note I want to mention that the presenting sponsor of your national convention is the Golf Auction. You can see more about them at thegolfauction.com. And again, if you want more information about the upcoming convention, that can be found on golfheritage.org's website. Dr. Bern, I want to thank you very, very much for coming on, and I'm glad that Linda is going to be a part of this event as well. Linda Harto, of course, is going to be a guest in a couple of weeks here again on Golf Talk Live, so I'm looking forward to speaking with her. So she'll be on actually before she takes part in that event. But what a great lady to honor and have some of her great artwork displayed. And it definitely, it's amazing. Her story was very, very interesting that she shared with us on the show, and I'm looking forward to speaking with her again in a couple of weeks. But Dr. Bern, I want to thank you again for coming on the show this evening and sharing a little bit more about the history. And you're always welcome, my friend, to come back on and share some more interesting things. And let me know when your archive collection is up and running, and I'll be more than happy to spread the word and let the folks know that they can go and check it out.
Great, Ted. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. The time really flew. So, yeah,
I know.
anytime that you want me to come on and tell some stories, I'll be happy to do it. But, yeah, the folks that want to learn more and enjoy the game of golf in 1,000 different ways, golfheritage.org. And I promise you, Ted, that I'll get back to you, and you have to see that Zoom. You'll just love it.
Yeah, I would love it. So, again, the Golf Heritage Society Trade Show is open to the public in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We'll hold your national convention from September 29th to October 3rd at the Doubletree Inn in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. And it's open. The trade show is open to the public on Saturday, October 2nd at the hotel from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Entry is free to the public, and there's no registration required. And again, you can go to their website, golfheritage.org, for more information. Dr. Bern, again, thank you very much for coming on this evening on Golf Talk Live. Always a pleasure, and I look forward to the next time.
Thanks, Ted. My pleasure. Take care, all.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. That was Dr. Bernacki, president of the Golf Heritage Society. Always enjoy having him on, and again, a true historian of the game, and a lot of very interesting things. And if you just want to see some of the different things and learn a little bit about them, you can go to their website, golfheritage.org. That's golfheritage.org. And if you're planning on or in the Pennsylvania area and you're going to be in the neighborhood, then I would strongly recommend that you attend the trade show. There's going to be, as he said, about 100 exhibitors that'll be there with all kinds of memorabilia. So if you really enjoy this game and you want to just see a little bit more about the history, then you might want to check that out. And again, you can get more information by going to golfheritage.org. All right. Again, I want to thank Sue Weger and Brandon Stooksbury for joining me tonight on the Coach's Corner panel. Thanks, guys, for doing a great job. And again, thanks to my special guest this evening, Dr. Bernacki. I will see you guys next week with another fresh panel on Coach's Corner and another insightful guest here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. We'd like to thank this week's Coach's Corner panel, and a special thank you to tonight's guest. Remember to join Ted every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central on Golf Talk Live. And be sure to follow Ted on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're interested in being a guest on Golf Talk Live, send Ted an email at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.